Okay, welcome members. This is Sean again. I wanted to drill down on another issue that I've been seeing a lot with our members, and that is the problem with paying cash. There's a lot of misunderstanding about money and cash and whether or not we should pay cash for an item versus finance that item. And I just wanted to talk briefly about that real quickly here. I'm sure you can remember back in school all that time we spent learning about money and finance and credit. I don't know if you remember those classes that we all took. If you're like me, you don't remember them at all because we never had that kind of training, which is another reason why we created the Strategic Wealth Network. So that these things just simply aren't taught in school at all. So we have to learn them on our own. All right. Well, real quickly, I want to have a real quick true or false quiz here. So, off the top of your head, I want you to tell me true or false. Paying cash saves interest. True or false? The second one is paying cash is better than borrowing. True or false? Number three, paying cash gives you more opportunities. True or false? And number four, paying cash allows you better returns. Is that true or false? Now, the real answer to all of these questions is it depends. It really depends on the circumstances in the situation. Now, there are several misconceptions about debt and cash. One of the biggest misconceptions is that all debt is bad. All debt is not bad. Another misconception is that having a big stash of cash in the bank or a store of cash in your savings account is the best position to be in, that cash is king. Another misconception is that arbitrage is only available to really, really rich people, the super wealthy, the high net worth individuals. And the last misconception that we're gonna go into is that compounding is how you create wealth. Well, the first myth that we need to dispel is that about paying cash for an item. Now, yeah, being able to pay quickly in cash is very convenient, but you have to understand that paying cash can affect your wealth potential in the long run. There are some wealth transfers that we can minimize, like taxes and living expenses. There are other wealth transfers that can be completely eliminated. The reason I bring this up is because wealth transfers have the greatest impact on our overall wealth building potential. Eliminating wealth transfers is a process, and that's why we've created this strategy called the reserve capital strategy. But it is a process, and it has different phases to that process. First phase is creating that reserve capital account. Second phase is capitalizing that account. That can happen very quickly or over time, depending on your circumstances. And then the third phase is implementing that strategy of deploying your capital into other productive assets that in turn will produce more revenue or cash flow. So the question is, which person do you want to be? Do you want to be a person that pays cash for everything and transfers their wealth through those expenses and those investments? Or do you want to be someone who is building wealth using a strategy like the reserve capital strategy? Now, let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. I have a client, she is 29 years old. She has about $45,000 cash in the bank. She's had it for quite some time, and that's her safety net. That's just in case something goes wrong, she can dip into that capital. And so she needs that liquidity, or at least she feels like she needs that liquidity. It's important to her. So what we decided to do was take about $35,000 of that 45. We're holding 10,000 back in the bank, and we're capitalizing a reserve capital account, front loading it with $35,000 in the first year. Okay, now immediately as soon as that check clears, you can see that her total net cash value is $24,000. So if she does need liquid access to some of that capital or most of that capital, she'll have it. She'll also have the $10,000 cash in savings. Okay. After that first year of front loading the account with $35,000, she's going to continue to add $25,000 every year into the account. And you can see here that her cash value just simply grows and grows and grows. In year 5, she said that she wants to borrow about $50,000 against her account and buy a house. So let's take a look at what that might look like if she just writes a check for $50,000 versus using her reserve capital account. So we have $25,000 going into a reserve capital account each year. We're going to assume that she's going to be capturing $25,000 of her income every year for the next 30 years until she retires. She's also using this account as her retirement account. In the 5th year, she's going to borrow out $50,000 from that account, borrow against her account, collateralize $50,000, and use that as a down payment on her home. Okay? Now, if she makes structured principal payments back to herself, that would be equal to $13,577 a year for the next 4 years. All right, we're going to look at 30 years down the road on her life insurance policy that we illustrated here. And if you take a look in year 30, you can see that her total death benefit on her policy is $4.5 million. That is the net death benefit on her policy. Her policy cash value in 30 years from now is $1.7 million. So she has $1.7 million that she'll be able to use tax-free at retirement if she wants to. And her total death benefit will be $4.5 million. Now, if she just paid cash for that down payment, let's assume that she can get 6% on her money in her savings account while she has the cash in her savings account. I don't know where she's going to find a savings account that pays 6%, but we're just going to assume that she can do the same thing as a reserve capital account. All right? We're assuming she's in that ordinary 28% tax bracket. If she wrote a check for $50,000 and transferred that wealth into the real estate purchase, she would have to pay herself back at the rate of $13,577 a year for the next 4 years to be able to recapitalize the $50,000 plus make up the 6% interest that she had lost, right? Because when we borrow from ourselves, we should be paying ourselves back with a certain amount of interest, the interest we would be losing had our money not sat there and compounded and grown. But in reality, what we typically do is we only pay it back at a rate of $12,500 a year for 4 years, just recapitalizing that original $50,000. You can see that's a pretty significant difference between paying yourself back with interest and just paying yourself back to get back to the original $50,000. All right. At the end of 30 years, you can see if she was to earn 6% on that $50,000, it would grow to $1.5 million. So by paying cash for that down payment on her home and recapitalizing, getting back to the original 50, she's missing out on interest she could be earning on her money had she not interrupted that compounding and drained the tank. So another way of looking at this is to analyze what is the opportunity cost of using my cash to pay for an item. So again, we've got that $50,000, and look at this. If that $50,000 is allowed to stay in your reserve capital account and enjoy uninterrupted compound growth for the next 30 years at 6%, you can see that the interest earned over that time frame, that 30-year time frame, is $251,000. That $50,000 at the end of that time frame will have grown to $301,000. So that's essentially what you're giving up when you write a check and pay $50,000 cash for an item. You're giving up that ability for the $50,000 to turn into $301,000. All right. Now, on the flip side of that same coin, if you borrowed $50,000 at 6%, that would be an interest payment or a payment back to the finance institution of about $300 a month. And so over the same time frame, over that 30-year period of time, you will have paid $57,900 in interest. And so theoretically, we say that by paying cash for that down payment, that $50,000 down payment, we're saving $57,000 in interest. But on the flip side of that same coin, you can see that the interest accumulated over that 30-year time frame on that $50,000 at 6% is $193,000. That's what you're giving up. Just the interest that can compound on that money over that time frame. The principal compounding over that time frame at 6% grows to $107,000. So the total cost of that decision, the $50,000 cash down payment on the house, is a $301,000 mistake. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. Now, in order to get an equivalent rate of return from her cash, similar to what she would get on her life insurance policy, she would have to get a 10% return on the death benefit, 14% taxable. Don't forget, you got to pay tax on that growth. On her cash value, she would have to get an equivalent 7% on her cash in order to be equal to what she would have in her reserve capital account after 30 years. So I hope you can see the difference between paying cash for an item or transferring that wealth versus allowing that wealth to continue and compound and grow tax free, and then accessing that money tax free when you need it or when you want it.